Hey there, and welcome to The Gathering. My name is Maddie. I'm the online pastor here. Thank you so much for being in worship with us today. Some quick housekeeping before we roll into the sermon. If you're new to our channel, be sure to go and click that subscribe button. Sermons like this one come out every Sunday, are available on demand all week long, but we also have shorts and other videos that come out on this channel. And so to make sure that you don't miss anything, that you stay the most connected, be sure to just go ahead and subscribe. You can also go down to the description of this video to find links to give if you're interested in that, links to our website to learn more about our church, and a link to fill out a Connect card. Filling that card out lets me know that you're here and gives me the chance to reach out, say hello, and help you get more connected. Now, today we are kicking off a new series called Screen Time, and I'm really excited about this, especially as the online pastor here at The Gathering and someone who spends the vast majority of my day online. We're talking about the relationship that we have to the technology in our life, because we acknowledge, technology is such a gift. It is an incredible thing that you and I can be in worship together today through a screen. And it can be hard to have a healthy relationship to the technology in our life if we're not sure what boundaries to put into place or how to navigate the fast pace as technology evolves. And so we're going to spend this series taking a look at what the Bible might have to say to help us inform our relationship to technology. I'm really excited about it. This sermon is going to be amazing. I hope you enjoy it. If you love it, share it with a friend. It might have something they need to hear as well. With all of that, I hope you enjoy the message. See you back here next time.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Gathering. It's so good to have you in worship. And I just want to stop for a second and just celebrate last weekend. Of course, it was Easter Sunday, and it was just an incredible day. Here at The Gathering, we celebrated 2 worship services out at the factory in Chesterfield. And I just want to stop and just share some highlights. You can see some of the pictures that are scrolling on the screen. We had over 2,700 people who joined us live for those worship services. If you count online through this week, 3,415 people worshiped with The Gathering this Easter, which I just want to thank all of you that were a part of that. But behind that, there's some other really exciting things. We had 78 families or people who were brand new fill out a Connect card and let us know they were there. Some of you may be watching or worshiping with us today. Thank you so much for being back. We had hundreds of people serving, incredible kids ministry, just an atmosphere that I felt like was alive, and just a deep sense that something unique is happening here at The Gathering. And then, of course, the offering. 100% of the offering on Easter is committed to our literacy project and other missions right here in the city of St. Louis. And our Easter offering was fantastic. It was $67,359.88. And as I'm preaching this, I know it keeps going up because some of you are giving even after the fact. So all of this is really worthy of us celebrating. And I want to thank all of you that were a part of it, whether you attended or invited a friend or served or participated in some other way. Thank you so much, especially if you gave towards that offering. Thank you so much for being a part of The Gathering. And I really, there is a sense that the Spirit is up to something in our church, especially right now this year in this season of our ministry. So I'm excited about what's to come. So this is going to date me a little bit, but to get into the topic that I want to focus on today, I can remember as a kid, and I know a lot of you that are here can probably remember this as well. We didn't have cable when I was growing up, so as a kid, my parents would watch just like the normal, channels, and usually it was Channel 5 in my house, and they'd watch the news. And on the rare occasion that I stayed up late enough to see what was on after the news, and then after that, something really weird now would happen. But roughly around midnight, the TV would actually sign off. And I brought a little example. It would look something like this. Check this out.
This is Jim Todd speaking for the management and staff, bidding you a pleasant good evening.
Now, I know this sounds crazy to some of you. The TV would purposefully go off, but it would. And there was this loud beeping noise usually that kind of made you turn the TV off. What this meant is that there was like this self-imposed limit from like midnight to 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning where you couldn't watch any more television. But then all of a sudden things started to change. And there were several things that led to the change, but there was one major mainstream invention that caused things to change, and it was this thing. A lot of you will recognize what that is. It's called a video cassette recorder, or a VCR. And among other things, what this VCR allowed you to do was to tape a show that was on at one time and watch it at a different time. And all of a sudden, you didn't have to watch whatever the TV stations programmed for you at that time. You could watch whatever you wanted, and you didn't have to watch it between the hours of 7 and 8 or 8 or 9. You could actually watch it whenever you wanted. All of a sudden, you could decide what you wanted to watch and when you wanted to watch it. And this began to change everything. Today, we're beginning a new sermon series called Screen Time, Troubleshooting Our Relationship with Technology. And I have to say, this is a topic that I've been both wanting and afraid to tackle for a really long time. There are all sorts of reasons that I think it's really important to talk about this and timely for us. I mean, for most of us, there's an ever-growing closeness to technology in our lives, from watches that I have right now to this phone, which is right here on the pulpit underneath my Bible, to goggles and iPads. Technology is closer to our lives than it ever has been. When I talk to parents, this is one of the major issues that parents are trying to face when it comes to raising their kids. When I talk to teenagers and even young adults, this is one of the major things that we're trying to navigate in our lives. When I talk to adults, to those who are working especially, technology has meant that you can work anywhere and all the time. It's impacting everything from our jobs to news. I think it'll impact the upcoming elections with AI. I mean, there's all sorts of new technology, and it seems to be rolling out at an ever more exponentially growing pace. Technology, it seems, is sort of closing in all around us, and it's a deeply personal part of our everyday lives. Just to give you a sense of what I'm talking about, consider this. 86% of people look at their phones the first thing in the morning. It's the very first thing that they do. And for 80% of people, it's the very last thing they do before they go to bed. And technology is with us every minute in between those extremes. So it kind of makes sense that if technology is such a big part of our life, that we ought to think about how we interact with it and what our faith might have to teach us about what to do with it. And so what we're going to do in this series is each week, I'm going to talk about some trends and temptations that I think technology presents to us. I'm going to talk about some different kinds of technology along the way. And I'm going to challenge us to think about how Scripture encourages us to live and what that might mean for our relationship with some of this tech. But I want to share just a few words as we start this series. First of all, technology, I know, is like a big and broad word, and we could talk about so many different things, but I'm really going to focus in this series on sort of the everyday technology that nearly all of us interact with, things like our phones, computers, internet, social media, things like that. Secondly, the Bible doesn't have a section in it that's like, matters of technology. So we can't just flip to the Bible and say, oh, here's the section that tells us what to do with technology. Of course, most of this technology wasn't invented anywhere around the time that the Bible was actually written. So what we're going to have to do is sort of look at themes or principles in the Bible and try to figure out how that can inform the way we view technology today. I mean, overall, what I think this series is about is, learning to live faithfully in the time that we're in. That's part of what it means to follow Jesus and be a disciple. And then finally, I just want to let you know, I am not here to beat you up on your use of technology. I think we can just stipulate that technology has its benefits and it has its downsides. I think we can just sort of stipulate that probably all of us overuse it to some extent and need to get a little bit of a better handle on what we do with technology. In fact, for me, the guiding premise of this series is this. When used intentionally, technology can bless us, but when we use it thoughtlessly, technology can harm us. And I think for at least most of us, we recognize that in many ways, technology, while a blessing, also is harmful or at least not helpful to a lot of us. And so I do hope that this series causes you to be more thoughtful and intentional before you use technology. Maybe it'll change the way that you're currently using technology. I hope it does that. And also, I want to point us toward, I think, other kinds of activities that we need to include in our lives that help put technology in its place. So with all that being said, today I want to start with this particular challenge that my opening story sort of illustrated. And that is that we have arrived in a pretty short period of time to a world in which we can consume technology in unlimited amounts. Whatever limits used to exist are long gone. TV stations don't sign off anymore, leaving us to consume whatever content we want, whenever we want, for as long as we want. And unlike those TV sign-off days of the past, content doesn't take any holiday in our life anymore. It's not off on Christmas. It's not off on the weekends. It doesn't sleep. And there's all sorts of course, examples of this. We can go to cable TV, which was 24 hours, and the internet and social media, which is sort of endless rabbit holes of stuff. But I think maybe the best example of limitless content for us is the world we now live in with streaming. Streaming, of course, is this idea that there's endless amounts of videos, content, TV, movies, videos to be watched or consumed at any time. Streaming means this. Streaming means that you can watch whatever you want, whenever you want, for as long as you want. And that's the world that we now live in. And just to get a sense of how quickly this changed, because I know that some of you think, well, that's the way the world has always been. It hasn't. You know, when I started the Gathering in 2006, right around that time, two things happened that really led to where we are today. The year before I started the Gathering, the very first streaming service was launched. It was actually 2005, and it was almost exactly 19 years ago. In April of 2005, the very first video was uploaded to YouTube. And if you're wondering what that video was, well, I'm going to show it to you. Here it is.
Alright, so here we are, one of the elephants. Cool thing about these guys is that they have really long fronts, and that's cool. And that's pretty much all there is to say.
Now that would actually point to what YouTube would become, which is just this endless amounts of amateur videos that could really be just about anything. Well, the year after the Gathering started in 2007, something else happened. That's the year that Netflix started to stream studio TV shows and movies for the first time. And it didn't take long then. I mean, just about 19 years later to go from limited content available to limitless content. This means that there's no one or nothing to temper how much of this stuff you consume. And what we've discovered is in 19 years without limits, some pretty shocking things have happened, and a lot of us have gotten into trouble. Now, I'm not going to flood you with statistics, but I do think this is sort of sobering. It's eye-opening that for the average adult, we consume over 7 hours of screen content in a day. You start looking at younger generations, and it actually gets worse. I mean, when we look at preteens, they already, before they even hit 11 years old, are consuming over 6 hours of content on a screen a day. Teenagers spend around 8.5 hours on screens. And when you get to Gen Z spends in excess of 9 hours a day consuming content from some kind of screen. But this is the new world that we live in, where we can consume whatever we want, whenever we want, for as long as we want. And what this has been hailed as is freedom by the technology companies, that now you're in control. You can do whatever you want. But with this freedom is also some real downsides that we have to figure out how to navigate. And so what I want to talk about today is how does our faith help us to navigate this world where we really can do kind of whatever we want? And I want to talk about several biblical principles that I think we need to bring to bear on this new world that we live in. The first biblical principle, and probably the one that sits over all of this, is something that the New Testament calls self-control. Now, I know that self-control is not a phrase that sounds very exciting to talk about. It's not one that we usually talk about in church, but it's a really important principle in the New Testament, especially when it comes to behavior that is not intrinsically good or bad, but it's kind of neutral. And it's how you use it that can determine whether it's good or bad in your life. So in the New Testament, for example, food and eating fell into this category. Eating is not good, it's not bad, but depending on how you do it, how you use food, it can become one or the other. Sex was another one that fell into this category. It's a natural part of life, but it can become unhealthy or it can be healthy. Well, I think our use of technology also falls into this category. And this is what Paul writes when he's dealing with things like this in our life, things that are normal, but can be either used for healthy or in unhealthy ways. Paul writes this in Corinthians. He says, I have the freedom to do anything, but not everything is helpful. I have the freedom to do anything, but I won't be controlled by anything. What Paul goes on to encourage is this idea that when it comes to these things in our life that are not necessarily bad or good, we have to learn to exercise control, or what Paul calls self-control. In these activities, we have to make sure that we control it instead of just allowing it to control us. In other words, yes, you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, for as long as you want. But that's not going to be healthy for you. So it's up to you to put some guardrails in place. And when it comes to limits, what we're finding is we as a society haven't yet figured this out when it comes to tech. For example, research shows that with kids 13 to 15 years old, 57% of them have no limits set by their parents on their use of technology. As for adults, over half of us as adults haven't really thought about the limits that we use. And I think this is a perfect place where the Bible would encourage us to begin to think about self-control. I'm just going to define that for you because some of you are wondering, like, Matt, what do you mean by that? Self-control is setting up systems and habits that help regulate a behavior. Recently, I tested out self-control by asking people, what rules do you have in place for how you use tech? Of course, some people threw out things like, they have certain times when they use it, and they try to limit their activity to a certain amount of time. But the truth is, a lot of people just sort of confess to me, I haven't really thought about the question. I don't really have any limits in place. And so the remaining principles that I want to talk about are really things that I think can help us inform habits that help us keep tech under control in our life. So that leads me to the second biblical principle. And the second biblical principle that I think impacts self-control and how we use tech is the principle of Sabbath. Now, I know a lot of you have heard me talk about Sabbath before. Sabbath can help us, though, with our overuse of technology. And really, Sabbath is the biblical rhythm of resting and working. But more broadly than that, Sabbath is dividing our time between periods of activity and periods of rest. Periods of work and production and consumption, and periods where we focus on rest and relationship with God and with other people. And of course, we see God practice this rhythm even when God creates the world. I mean, Genesis chapter 2 says, the heavens and the earth and all who live in them were completed. And on the sixth day, God completed all the work that he had done. And on the seventh day, God rested from all the work that he had done. God blessed the seventh day and made it holy because on it God rested from all the work of creation. So the Bible tells us that God already was dividing time up between periods of work and activity and periods of rest from activity. And then the Bible goes on to say that God mandated this for people, that God wanted God's people to think about time this way: periods for work, periods for rest. I'll give you an example, I think, of what this has looked like. Years ago, I was in public, and without really thinking about it, I turned to somebody, and I was with like a group, and I asked a guy, I said, hey, could you mind just taking our picture real quick? And the guy actually refused. He said, no, I'm not going to take your picture. And I was kind of like, well, I mean, what's the deal? Why can't you take our picture? And then he explained to me that he's an Orthodox Jew, and they're not allowed to operate or to use a phone on the Sabbath. It was a Saturday. And this usage of technology is actually prohibited for most Orthodox Jews because it uses electricity, and electricity is prohibited because in the Bible it says that on the Sabbath we're not to light a fire, to kindle a fire in our homes. Now, I don't think that most of us are going to go back to a day where, we don't use any technology on a certain day of the week. That's not what I'm recommending, but it got me thinking about, do we ever carve out regular time, either in a day or during the week, where we rest from technology? And it's a question just for you. I mean, do you have any times during the day that you sort of set aside and say, yeah, all this other time I can work, I can use, I can be active, even on technology, but for this 1 hour at the beginning of the day or this 1 hour at the end of the day, I'm not going to use it. Maybe it's mealtime or maybe it's Sunday afternoon, but do you intentionally build into each day and every week space or pause from technology, knowing that if we don't, it can easily take over every minute of every day? And so the principle of Sabbath gets us thinking about daily and weekly times where we take a rest from technology to focus on God and relationships in our life. It's one of the ways that we can practice self-control. Third principle in Scripture that helps us get at this is the principle of fasting. Now, I know some of you are saying, Matt, fasting, I thought that was about food and some kind of dieting thing, and that's sort of right. I mean, historically, that is what fasting usually entailed. Fasting was about, foregoing eating. And let me just explain to you historically why. In the ancient world, food was a major temptation for people, not primarily for dieting reasons, but many people saw food as like a luxury that so many people couldn't afford. And so they thought, I need to eat only what I need and not any more than that. To do any more of that is indulgent, it's selfish, it's wasteful because it robs other people of the opportunity to eat. And therefore, they wanted to have a healthy relationship with food. And so fasting was a practice that helped them do that. Fasting was not about diet, not about losing weight. Instead, fasting was intentionally to forego something in order to resist temptation and to reconnect with God. Let me say that one more time. Fasting is to intentionally forego something, not do it, in order to resist temptation and to reconnect with God. And we see Jesus practice fasting at the beginning of his ministry when he went out into the wilderness. It says this, "Then the Spirit led Jesus up into the wilderness so that the devil might tempt him. And after Jesus had fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, he was starving. The tempter came to him and said, 'Since you are God's son, command these stones to become bread.'" Now I just want to note something, that here Jesus is specifically refraining from eating in an effort to clear his mind and to connect with God. And in that moment, the devil tries to tempt him. The temptation arises. So it also gives him the ability to push back against temptations in his life. Now, for generations before and generations since then, people actually of all different faiths have practiced fasting. And fasting would give people time to really consider the role that food, in this case, played in their life. To refocus themselves spiritually on God and to resist the temptation that food provided them. And so fasting usually included a more prolonged setting aside of a particular behavior like eating, sometimes for a day or a week, in more extreme cases for an entire month or even more. Now, fast forward to today. Today, fasting is still usually associated with food, but we actually practice it with regards to all sorts of things in our life. Fasting can be applied to anything that you are tempted to overuse or overindulge in. So I'll give you some really well-known examples of modern-day fasting. Modern-day fasting, have you ever heard of dry January, where people specifically refrain from a whole month after the holidays from drinking alcohol usually? Or maybe the best example is this idea of giving something up for Lent. I mean, That's fasting, is giving something up, something that there's a temptation in our life that we want to get better control of. And that time of giving it up helps us to reconsider maybe the role that it plays in our life and hear from God in a different way. Well, you can see where this is going. I think when it comes to technology, periods of fasting really can help us not only reconnect to God and to other people around us, but to consider maybe the role that technology has been playing in our lives and where it's really tempting us in some unhealthy ways. And so I encourage you to think about periods of fasting. There's a lot of people who decide to fast from social media. Maybe it's one day of the week or for a week or a month at a time. I know people who decide to fast from TV or streaming services, a particular app or a gaming system or anything they feel may have kind of a creeping control over their life. So fasting, a prolonged period where I say I'm not going to do that in order to reevaluate it, can help us set up self-control over our use of tech in our lives. And the last biblical principle that I think can inform this is accountability. And accountability is really just inviting other people into our commitment so that we can stay better faithful to it. It may sound funny to say that self-control requires other people, but I really think this is true. I mean, this again is a well-worn piece of scriptural advice. Anytime that we want to get control of something in our life, we should not try to go it alone. Anytime we want to seek a change or establish a habit in our lives, we should try to set up ways to stay accountable, and that usually means other people. So accountability just means setting up ways to track and to stay faithful to whatever goals you've set up in your life. And this includes, of course, checking in with others. I mean, Proverbs famously says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens a friend. And so accountability means putting some systems in place that help you monitor whatever ways you want to control tech in your life. And so there's all sorts of examples for this. I mean, parents, you can set limits on nearly every piece of tech that your kids have. I encourage you to do that for accountability. Otherwise, it's so easy for us to just say, forget it, just take another hour there. Adults, I really encourage you to use screen time calculations, especially on your phone. Every Sunday, I get a little report of what my average screen time was that past week. I mean, there's something, really humbling about just that being flashed up in front of me. No matter what I think I did, it shows me how much I really used those devices. Set up goals and begin to track those goals. And of course, share those goals with someone else. Maybe it's somebody in your family, maybe it's a friend, but check in with them about what you're trying to accomplish in your life when it comes to tech. I'll say one of the best ways to do this is to listen to the people around you. Recently, I was talking about this just around the dinner table. And my son George said, Matt, you're the worst, Dad. You're the worst at this, because when I'm talking to you and you're on your phone, you're like a zombie. It's like you're not even listening to me. I was about ready to argue with him. And then I thought, this is probably an unwise thing to argue about. I need to listen. And so one of the easiest and the best ways to build accountability is to just listen to the people who are closest to you and ask them how you're doing. Listen to them if they tell you that there's a problem when it comes to you and some particular piece of tech in your life. But all of this, what building a rhythm into our day or a week where we take pauses, fasting, and intentionally foregoing an activity for a certain period of time to reevaluate it, and then just setting goals and tracking those goals and staying accountable. These are all ways that we practice self-control. And this is one of the ways that we deal with a reality that we live in a world where we can stream everything. We can do whatever we want, whenever we want, for as long as we want. To close on a word of hope, I was talking to my son Caleb not that long ago, and I was asking him why he didn't respond to me on a certain social media app, and he said, Dad, I deleted that particular app. It just wasn't healthy, he concluded. And this kind of gave me hope that in a world where I just think maybe this is too far gone, like even our kids have a sense that that there's a balance that they need to restore in their life when it comes to technology. It gave me hope that we can push back in a world where technology is ever closer to us. And so today, I just want us to recognize that we live in a streaming world where we can consume what we want, when we want, for as long as we want. And in this world, we need to exercise self-control. We need to be more intentional to navigate this faithfully. And we do this, we exercise this self-control, I think, through those rhythms of Sabbath, by fasting, by setting up systems for accountability in our life. And so what I want to leave you with today is really just a challenge. This week, here's what I'd love for you to do. I'd love for you to just audit your own use of tech in your life, whether that's streaming, your phone, your laptop, wherever you're most tempted. Audit your use of tech. Track how much time you're actually spending. Ask the people around you if they notice anything in you. And I guarantee you'll see some areas of your life where you maybe need to be more intentional and begin to practice greater self-control. This is the first step in recovering, I think, a sense of balance in our life and a healthy relationship to the technology that's all around us every day. Will you pray with me? Gracious and holy God, I'm amazed the way that 2,000, 3,000-year-old text can still be so meaningful for the lives that we're seeking to live today. And I think this is especially true when it comes to our relationship to technology. And so, God, my prayer is that we would be able to see in a clear-eyed way where we maybe have an unhealthy relationship with technology in our life, how that might be keeping us from you and other people that you put in our lives, goals and hopes and dreams that you want us to live out in our lives. And God, I pray that you would send your Spirit upon us to help us to be honest about where we are and to begin to take steps to practice what you say is indeed a fruit of the Spirit, and that is self-control. So God, help us this week to take practical steps towards regaining a sense of balance in our lives, so that we can see you and the life that you desire us to live more clearly. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. And together God's people said, amen.